What I want to share with you this still morning, almost afternoon, is something that has inspired me to change how I live each day. Over the summer, I interned with a nonprofit organization called Growing Leaders down in Atlanta, or as some of you would call it, Hotlanta. The founder, Dr. Tim Elmore, wrote a series of books titled Habitudes. What are habitudes? They combine images, relatable stories, and experiences into leadership lessons that resonate with today's young adults. His goal is to help students like you and me feel equipped to navigate through life's challenges and opportunities. Today, I want to share just 3 of the many habitudes that resonated with me over the summer that I hope you'll find applicable to you today. The first one is called emotional fuel. A person's future is shaped by the people closest to him or her. An individual's personal network is what Dr. Elmore would identify as emotional fuel. These are his or her models, heroes, mentors, inner circle, and accountability partners. Cars can't run without fuel. If you continue to force the car to run without fuel or oil in the engine, you're going to run into problems. I myself have never run out of fuel, but I have been in the car with someone who has. Many of you have had the privilege to know my wonderful boyfriend, Jeremy Fainer, from whom I have received permission to tell this story today. Something you might not have known about him is his resourcefulness and his ability to just make things work despite the odds. A few years ago, the gas gauge broke on his car. Instead of just spending the hundreds it cost to fix it, and it was hundreds, Jeremy decided he was just going to become a mental mathematician and calculate how much gas he used since he last filled the tank to know when to fill it again based on how many miles he's traveled. It's always sounded tedious to me, but then I guess that's one way to work the college budget. What's amazing is he does this with what I would say 97% accuracy. Obviously, this is about the 3% away he was from that 100. We were on our way back from church, headed to his house so he could change before lunch. Just a few feet from the top of Snyder Road, when next to me I hear him say, "No." Okay, it was a little more manly than that. It was more like a no. The car had hit empty before we could coast to the top of the hill. We hadn't been dating very long, and it was late fall, so it was pretty cold outside. But I marched alongside him the half mile or so back to his house to fill up the gas can, to drive another car to the gas station, then back to his car parked alongside the road. Similarly to how cars require fuel in order to run, we require spiritual and emotional fuel in order to function the way we should. Let's focus on emotional fuel. Can you think of someone in your life who is needy? Someone who wears you out. Someone who seems to be using others to meet his or her needs for flattery, prestige, and ego fulfillment. Perhaps this person's ego is riding directly on whether or not people affirm them that day. They may simply be lonely and in need of encouragement. My mother often used an analogy about an emotional bank. You need to pay attention to how much you're putting in so that you have enough to take out when is necessary. Very few relationships break perfectly even. Research says we are strongly affected by the 5 closest people to us. Do these people contribute positively to your emotional energy? Our character and our relationships are closely linked. Whenever there is a problem in our character, we pay a price in our relationships. Whenever we have a relationship problem, it affects our character. So who is your inner circle? Do you have mentors to invest in you? What about partners who stand by your side and hold you accountable? Proverbs 27:17 says, "Iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another." The second habitude I feel ties in really well with this. It's called sturdy guardrails. We often don't notice guardrails until we need them. They keep us on the road during a curve or dangerous spot. Similarly, we must place guardrails in our lives. These are boundaries or people who hold us accountable and keep us from damaging ourselves with poor decisions. Looking back on the regrets we hold due to our bad decisions, we'll notice that it was usually the result of failing to put up guardrails in our lives. We need to be thoughtful in our relationships and surround ourselves with people who keep us accountable to our success. Quick history lesson. Are any of you familiar with Victor Hugo? He's the author of Les Mis and The Hunchback of Notre Dame, later turned into a fantastic Disney film for those of you who are interested in that sort of thing. Victor Hugo was bright, but terribly distracted. He would experience serious writer's block due to these distractions, and he was unable to place his thoughts on paper. To overcome this, he developed a solution. He would ask his valet to take all of his clothes before locking himself into his room with just a pen and a paper, unable to leave until he had been writing almost all day. Sources say that means he wrote Les Mis completely naked, although there were no witnesses, so potentially new study technique for some of you out there. It's counterintuitive in a world where we aim to be independent and self-sustaining. Asking for help feels weak and much too vulnerable. Accountability sounds like having another parent, but that's not it. It's powerful to believe in something and to set a standard for yourself in order to embrace a new lifestyle change. There's a reason my mom said I had to try lima beans 22 times before I'd like them. It takes time and investment into building good habits. With sturdy guardrails, you can live the life you've always wanted. Proverbs 11:14 says, "When there is no guidance, the people fall, but in the abundance of counselors, there is victory." But what about letting go? The third habitude is called pass on the left. In life, you will notice that the people you once hung around may not continue with you on your journey. That's okay. When you grow in new directions, be sure to pass others appropriately, making sure you burn no bridges along the way. I grew up in a military family, and it was common for us to move around a lot. Sometimes I would create those lifelong friends, and other times they were just friends for a season. While it's important to cultivate good friendships, it's impossible to stay close to everyone. Many of you might be experiencing that right now in college. Your closest friends your freshman year don't have the same schedule you do this semester. Or you may be finding you're headed separate directions as your career paths unfold before you. Isn't it funny how sometimes when you compare the friends you had to those you hang out with now, or say the friends you had in middle school or high school, they're not even remotely the same kinds of friends you have today. You've changed. Either that or you're picking friends like daisies and you don't even know who your real friends are. Social media really throws this off for us because statistically speaking, we are unable to maintain real relationships with more than 150 people. If you count your friends on Facebook, that's about 1/3 of the average, and I know many of you who have closer to 1,000 Facebook friends, shrinking that fraction to be much smaller. And if we include Instagram and Twitter, you have followers you don't even know. That's all right, though. You can hold on to your acquaintances and your friends that you don't stay in contact with, but don't deceive yourself. The real problem is we don't know how to walk away from the people we should walk away from. A survey by Today.com discovered that of their respondents, over 3/4 of them said they had a toxic friendship, and for 1/3 of them, it had been their best friend. We just can't let go. Take some good advice and recognize those who won't be finishing the journey with you. Friends may be for a season. While many people don't know how to cultivate a healthy relationship, even more don't know how to end one. Guys, there's a right and a wrong way to do it. And before we dive into that, I would like to help you look at some and identify some potentially toxic relationships. Don't let these be your top 5. Number 1, the false victim. This is the type of person who always feels under attack and are needing to be rescued. They eventually say you're the one hurting them. Number 2, the narcissist. They really are just in love with themselves, and they fail to see the importance of anyone else's needs. The chronic downer, who seems to be only able to look at the negative side of life. And get this one, the overly religious. Ever met one of those? These are people who really are all about controlling others. They use the Bible to prove they're right and others are wrong. They're not healthy people devoted to their faith. They're simply trying to take advantage of you and their religion to give them authority. It's not healthy. So I'll say it again, it's okay to let go. Ask yourself, do I feel better after spending time with you? Do you bring out the best in me? Do you celebrate in my success? Do not be misled. Bad company corrupts good character. You may be wondering, what can I do? Well, I have a solution for you. Habitudes includes these 3 steps for success for passing on the left. Get the tone right. Don't be harsh, cruel, or shaming in your language. Speak the truth with care and empathy. It's easy to let your anger set the bridge on fire. Your words should be both decisive and controlled. Begin with the end in mind. Know the conclusion that is healthy for you. If you don't establish your objectives ahead of time, you may never meet them. And number 3, respect your past. It's easy to forget what once made you friends in the first place. It's important to show value for them as a person and for their well-being, even as you're parting ways. Cutting people off or ostracizing them doesn't align with the character of a Christian. Don't waste your energy on close relationships that aren't feeding you emotionally. Be selective in your time and think advantageously in who you gift the title friend to. In order to keep going, you need emotional fuel. The greatest leader I've ever been taught who walked the earth was Jesus, and even he was selective in picking his personal network, the 12 disciples. Luke 16:12-13 says, "And it was at this time that he went off into the mountains to pray. And he spent the whole night in prayer to God. And when day came, he called his disciples to him and chose 12 of them, for whom he also named as apostles." I share all of this with you today, not because I've mastered all of these habitudes, or should I say good habits, but because I've been inspired to allow them to change how I live each day since I discovered them this past summer. This is college. If there's any place in the world to learn who it is that you want to be, it's here on the campus of Andrews University. But don't mess around because it will be over faster than you can imagine. Trust me. I'm a senior wondering where the last few years have gone. I want to appeal to you as someone who is facing some of the biggest transitions in life. I want to make the right career decisions. I want to be prepared for the journey ahead and feel proud of my successes. That just means that now, more than ever, my models, heroes, mentors, inner circle, and accountability partners are vital. How we pilot the big transitions we experience in life, the things we use to energize us, and the people we surround ourselves with speaks directly to our character. As Christians, we don't have to navigate these new waters alone. The Holy Spirit helps us identify the right people for the right time. So live your life, the life you've always wanted, by establishing sturdy guardrails and accountability partners. Learn to pass on the left and recognize the right people for the journey ahead of you. And lastly, build healthy, strong relationships that fuel you and help you reach your highest potential.